Hello, this is Chukudum from Duse Farms. Today we're going to be dealing with the issue of water, the importance of water, the importance of quality of water for your birds. Water for broilers is something I'm very, very passionate about. And if there's anything I talk about more than water, I can't think of what it is. And the reason is very simple. I suffered a lot about 10 years ago from dirty water. At the time, I was raising about 5,000 broilers every 2 weeks. And I did not realize that my well was contaminated. And so I'll get birds every 4 weeks, they'll start dying off. Maybe only 1/3 will do well, 1/3 will die off, and 1/3 will just be, at 6 weeks, will be look like 2 week or 3 week birds. And at first, I thought it was poor quality day-old chicks. So I blamed the hatchery. Then I thought it was a feed. After I made so many changes, at one point, I decided, well, let me just move the birds out of the farm and rent a farm somewhere else and see maybe the problem was some kind of spiritual problem from my farm. And then I discovered that when I moved my birds to a new farm, and at that time I was giving them water from 9th Mile. Those who know 9th Mile in Enugu will know that 9th Mile has some of the best water in Africa. And the best were doing very well, started doing very well. There were 4 weeks when I moved them, and they just started doing very well. So I went back and tested my water. And I found out that I had 150 times the allowable amount of E. coli in my water. And that was because every time we washed our pen, we washed the pen near the well, and when it rained, the rain took all that water down to the well. And so I realized the problem was E. coli in my water. But at that point, I had lost 25 million naira. And so since then, I've paid particular attention to water. That's why I started boiling water. And right now, I raise maybe 1,000 broilers. I'll maybe lose 4 in the first 2 weeks. So the averages I'm getting now is great. Sometimes in 6 weeks, I get 1% mortality. So water is very important. In fact, it's the most important drug you can give your pets, if you want to call that a drug. It's the most important nutrient you're going to give your birds. It's the most important thing to your birds next to air. So take the issue of water very seriously. Most of your problems will come from your water. Trust me on this. As you know, next to air, water is the most important thing in life. The importance of water cannot be overemphasized. A broiler, for instance, is made up of 55% water. Most of the sicknesses your broiler is going to have, going to experience, will be a result of bacterial infection from water. So giving your birds clean water is your number one priority as a farmer. Most of us don't understand this, and most of us feel that our birds can drink any water and we'll give them drugs. But it's better to prevent infections by giving them pure water than clean water, than trying to get drugs to take care of the bacteria. Water quality is often an overlooked nutrient. Water is involved in every aspect of animal metabolism. It plays an important role in the regulation of body temperature, in moving food through the digestive system and carrying nutrients. You need it for enzymatic and chemical reaction in the body. You need it for the lubrication of the joints and organs. You need it for elimination of waste products from the body. And it affects the growth of microorganisms. So water is probably more important than the feed. The air, quality of air and quality of water, and quality of your litter management is probably more important to the health of your pets than even feed. It is important that water be clear, tasteless, odorless, and colorless. But even if you have all of these, I think you have to operate under the assumption that your water is not clean. That's the best way to proceed. Now, there are two things about water. The first is that you have to give clean water. The second is how do you get the clean water to your beds? And we'll talk about it in a minute. How do you make sure your water is clean? The best way to make sure your water is clean is by boiling it. 100% of your bacteria is eliminated. And this is, if you're not boiling your water, then you have to use a water sanitizer like isochlor, and there's several others in the market. It's very inexpensive, so there's no reason not to use isochlor or use any form of water sanitizer. At all times, beds must have clean, cool water, 24 hours a day, unless you are starving them for 2 hours for vaccination purposes. You have to test your water periodically, maybe once every 6 months. That's the only way you can be sure your water is clean. However, if you want to be on the safe side, the first 3 weeks of the best life, boil their water. The rest of the life, use water sanitizer. I think that's just the best way to stay on the safe side. How do you get How do you get water to your beds? Well, there are different ways. One is using a bell drinker, which is the means I prefer. I think the bell drinker is the best way for you to get water to your beds. One, the bell drinker will cut down the work you do by almost 80%. Anybody who knows anything about poultry knows that changing the water and getting the water consumes more time than any other activity you do in the farm. If you're using bell drinkers, you only have to clean the drinkers once a day. The water flows very well, it's very cool, and they can't spill all the water. I mean, it's just a safe way to give them to get water to them. The other way you can use is using the regular water cans. I don't like that as much because the water cans, the flow is not very good, and a lot of times the birds can just tilt the can and lose all the water. So I don't like that as much. And you have to understand how well your birds drink will affect their growth, their performance. If they are drinking well, they will eat well. If they're not drinking well, they will not eat well. So all of this affects the performance of your birds. The other system you can use is the nipple system. The nipple system is actually less work than the bell drinkers, but it's a little bit technical. And sometimes your birds may not like it as much in a hot environment because they have to go get water maybe several trips, and it takes more effort to get water than with a bell drinker. So you have to consider that. But if you have a very large farm, 10,000 birds or 5,000 birds, you may have no choice than to go to nipple drinker. Like I said, clean water, boil the water for at least the first 3 weeks of their lives. And you're not going to have any issues with salmonellosis, E. coli, and any of these diseases you have in the first week or first 2 weeks of brooding. It's very important, and the performance of your birds will show. One other thing you might want to do in the first week of your bird's life is to give them slightly warm water, just like you do with your babies. The reason is you don't want to give them just pure cold water when they come in. So make it lukewarm. I said lukewarm, not hot water, just lukewarm water the first week of your bird's lives. You must use common sense when you're dealing with your birds, especially when you're dealing with their water. Do not do anything to your birds that you will not do for yourself or your children. When you have new children, you boil their water. It's common sense. Nobody ever goes and gives their babies cold water from the well. So do the same thing and you have the same result, which is excellent result for your birds. One of the things about water is your first indication that your birds are sick is from the amount of water they drink. If you were measuring the amount of water your birds drink, that would be the first sign that your birds are having some problems, even before they reduce the feed intake, even before the change of the color of their poo, which is usually the first time most farmers know, first time most farmers see that the birds are sick. So if you're measuring the amount of water they drink, they were drinking 200 liters a day, and suddenly the same temperature, you notice they're drinking 150 liters, then something's wrong, something's going on. So the earlier you start to figure out what it is, the better for you. Well, if you have learned anything that I've said so far in this video, Please subscribe so that when I get other videos, you'll be the first to know. Share so other farmers will have a chance to gain the same knowledge you have. And make comments about the video, ask questions. Also comment on other topics you might want me to discuss in the future. Thank you.